An unconditional ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine is going to start on Monday, May 12th, if Russia agrees to it. That is what we're hearing out of Ukraine's capital of Kyiv earlier today, in which we saw representatives from the Coalition of the Willing meeting with Zelensky. We're talking about Keir Starmer, Macron. We're talking about representatives from Germany, Poland, and of course, people online. Plus, we know that representatives spoke to those here in the United States, talking about Donald Trump and other representatives about what's going to happen if Russia says no to a ceasefire. Spoils going into this. Russia has already said no to the ceasefire. So let's take a step back and talk about what happened today, because today was a historical meeting. It really was a big deal to see Starmer, Macron, and all of them together in Ukraine. Just doing that was a big step. But to also guarantee that the United States will be backing it is an even bigger step. And so we're going to jump back to Zelensky. After the meeting, held a press conference where he said here, we agree, talking about the Coalition of the Willing, that a full and unconditional ceasefire must begin on May 12th for at least 30 days. We jointly, referring to the United States, most of Europe and other countries in the Coalition of the Willing, demand this from Russia, and we know we are supported in this by the United States. The ceasefire must be comprehensive in the air, at sea, and on land. Monitoring the ceasefire is entirely feasible in coordination with the United States. This is a realistic goal. So that was the official announcement from Zelensky himself. He said it in Ukrainian. It was then translated into every single language so that every single country can understand what Zelensky is saying here. Then later we heard quotes from other world leaders in which the UK says they're ready to go. Macron said he actually spoke to Donald Trump after their meeting before the press release, in which Donald Trump once again pledged the US support to monitor the ceasefire. On top of these conversations about a ceasefire and the rules and who's going to monitor and X, Y, and Z, Ukraine, alongside with all these countries, put together a list of sanctions. These sanctions are on everything from banks to businesses to the Russian shadow fleet to a lot of things inside of Russia. Ultimately, what the Coalition of the Willing, with the backing of the United States, did was this. Hey, Russia, unconditional ceasefire, land, air, sea, infrastructure, all of the above starting Monday. Or, starting Monday, we're going to put even more sanctions on you, and we're going to give Ukraine more tools, more weapons, more things so they can strike back at it. Because ultimately, the only way to get Russia to the table is by pressuring them. Whether that's going after oil, whether that's going after other industries, we're talking about fiber optic facilities, munitions facilities, other kind of plans in which it's helping the Russian war machine. This was the major announcement today, 30 days. Zelensky even went further in his announcement by saying, as soon as we all spoke together with Donald Trump, we agreed on a common view of further actions. A complete unconditional ceasefire is very necessary, adding that we can agree together on the foundation for establishment of peace, and that of course, if Russia does say no to this, there should be consequences. Him saying if Russia refuses a full and unconditional ceasefire, sanctions should be applied. Sanctions against energy sector, banking have already been strengthened. And even yesterday, we saw the UK put together the largest sanction package ever as it comes towards the Russian shadow fleet. That is the fleet that leaves Russia with crude oil, and they kind of go around waiting for ports to accept them. They accept the oil. That's how they get around those sanctions. And so we know that we need to go after those ships, whether it is confiscating them or not allowing them to go into certain areas. That's what we could be seeing here. Without hesitation, Russia denied it. They actually denied it technically twice. So Russia knew that these conversations were going to happen. And so the spokesperson from the Kremlin, Dmitry, had an interview with ABC News in which he says here, when he's denying this, remember, this is before the official announcement, he says that he will not, or at least Russia, will not accept a ceasefire from Ukraine because it would be an advantage to Ukraine.
Ceasefire was supported by President Putin, but he asked several questions. He said that right now we have a certain dynamics on the fronts. Russian troops are advancing, and advancing in quite a confident way. So if we speak about ceasefire, what are we going to do with shipments of weapons?
Sort of something that they've said many of times before in the days leading up to this, that we can never accept a ceasefire first and then start discussing things. We need to get certain nuances figured out first, and then we can have a ceasefire, which doesn't make any sense, because then Russia could just continuously batter away into Ukraine as they're trying for peace. And you know as much as I do that Russia trying for peace is Russia not really trying for peace. How many ceasefires has there been now that Russia has violated or just never accepted? They haven't even accepted their own ceasefire. That 30-hour one over Easter, they didn't accept it. They introduced it. They didn't accept it. The ceasefire, which is supposed to go until midnight tonight, which technically speaking still has 3 or 4 hours left, Russia's violated it so many times that it's not even funny. Now, granted, there were some nights where it was a little bit quieter, but across the entire front lines, as Ukrainians said, it was extremely noisy. There was no peace. Kherson still getting hit, Kharkiv, explosions in Sumy, it was non-existent. In Prokotsk, in all these areas. Russia never stopped their war. They just kept on coming and coming and coming. That being said, Dmitry says here, Ukraine will continue their total mobilization, bringing new troops to the front line. Ukraine will use this period to train new military personnel and give rest to their existing ones. So why should we grant such an advantage to Ukraine? Essentially saying, hey, look, if there was a ceasefire, Russia would obey that. We would say, yes, ceasefire will stop everything, but Ukraine, they will not. What? Russia, you violated everything, man. You truly think that if there's a ceasefire, we don't already know that you're going to do that? So why would we even bother putting that in writing when we know you're going to violate it, and then you're going to say, no, we didn't, and then you'll say, well, Ukraine violated it, and no, they didn't. So it's like, you know what, guys, let's not even put that in there. Because Russia, you're going to violate, and you're going to claim that Ukraine violated it. So whatever. So he already denied and said no there. Dmitry also then continued by saying that the Russian President Vladimir Putin is, quote, doing whatever is possible to solve the problem, to achieve a settlement through peace and diplomatic means. But without a clear resolution of the war in place, Russia has to continue the war. So that is their first official time saying no. Now, they said no to other ceasefires, and this one clearly is a flat-out no. They have to continue their war, according to them. They have no choice. They must continue their war. We can make the argument here that this interview, which was done by ABC News, was done prior to the official announcement. Okay, fine. You can go ahead and make that claim if you want to, but then explain this new interview that Dmitry put out here, okay? Because in it, and this was after the announcement, in it he pretty much says, bring it on, we're ready for your sanctions. This is what the Russian media put out, TASS and RIA. He said, and I want to read the article actually word for word. It says, Moscow can't be scared by another round of sanctions as it has adapted to them and they know how to react. He pointed this out in an interview with a journalist speaking about the new sanction threats made by Western countries, including the UK and Germany. To quote him here, quote, we have all gotten used to the sanctions by now, he noted. We even have an idea already as to what we could do after they're imposed, how we will stop their consequences, and so on. We've already learned to do this already. So trying to scare us with these sanctions is a waste of time, and it is rather their problem that they're feeling antsy. And of course, as I'm editing this video, Russia just announced that it would be useless to put pressure onto Russia. You said that in an interview with CNN?
It's quite useless to try to press upon us.
Okay, this is not a country that is looking for peace. You and I both know they don't want peace to begin with. But to say these comments publicly, you're telling every country around the world, bring it. We're not scared of you. You're just antsy because, you know, we're winning in this war. And that's the Russian mindset here. It's very hateful. And I need to remind you about our video yesterday, in which I told you the U.S. Embassy already put a warning on their website saying that within the next several days, there could be a massive air attack on Ukraine. This message could indicate that Russia is considering using the Orshanik, their intermediate ballistic missile, something they've used once in Dnipro. It caused damage, but it really wasn't nothing crazy because they didn't load it with a crazy munition. You know, they could put nuclear weapons inside of it or other things. They probably won't use nuclear war, though. But Russia had threatened to use nuclear war about 3-4 days ago, nuclear weapons, and we all just kind of laughed and went, well, you've always threatened that. You never actually did it, so we don't believe you. But the Orshanik they've used, and that might scare some people, but clearly it didn't, since now today we're seeing the US and the UK and the coalition, the willing, threatening Russia and saying, yo, you gotta do a ceasefire by Monday, which is the first time we're seeing such a collection of countries say, yo, you're doing it now. And so we're seeing potentially Russia wanting to use the Orshanik, in which the US embassy is potentially warning about. And now we're seeing that area in which Russia launches that Orshanik kind of go through a no-fly zone between May 12th and 13th, which does kind of add to the indication that the US embassy put out that Russia could be using the Orshanik. Obviously, those are things that are all up in the air. And clearly, if we're seeing this mass push for peace, Russia is getting ready to do something. We just technically don't know what, though. The Orshanik kind of seems like the likely thing that Russia would do because they like to terrorize Ukrainians, and that would be the next step since, well, they're not going to use nuclear weapons. That being said, this puts us all now in a very weird situation in which the entire world is saying, Russia, peace, or we're going to give Ukraine everything and sanction you more. And Russia's saying, we're not doing peace because we think Ukraine's going to use it to their advantage, or we're going to go ahead and we're just going to keep fighting. Like, that's what Russia's pretty much saying right now. It's not on this or that. They're just going to keep going. Now, what we can tell you is this. The United States, under Donald Trump, they have a 22-point list of conditions for a ceasefire. This would not only just be a ceasefire, it's actually a little bit more than that. It says here the document refers in particular to a 30-day ceasefire, but it's more than just a ceasefire. And in this 22-point list, which Steve Witkoff is supposed to be handing to Putin, I'm not sure if it's a physical hand or if it's something else they're going to actually give it to him. But in that, there are a lot of things in there that obviously are to end this war. But Russia had complained about a few different things, so they did make one compromise. In it, they wrote that the United States will not support Ukraine being added into NATO. Now, once this list is handed to Putin, which, I mean, ceasefire is supposed to start on Monday, we're going to see what happens. This is kind of up in the air. And it's such an interesting time because there's a lot of things that Russia want. And we even saw J.D. Vance say that Russia's asking for too much, referring to the land. Russia shouldn't have any land to begin with. That being said, there's a lot that is happening here. And Russia seems to not want to agree with a single little bit of it, which means that we could be seeing a major escalation coming in the next few days. Now, the one thing I just want to point out is that come Monday, we could see Russia actually say, sure. This could all blow over by tomorrow where Russia does feel pressure. If not, then the countries that are part of the coalition of the willing, who have been working on this now for several months, they need to, and I know they said it on paper, they need to step up completely. And I mean full throttle, hands off of, well, maybe we shouldn't, maybe we should. Germany, you got to give the Tauruses. Ukraine's got to strike these plants, airfields, and munition storage bases and depots. The United States, more ATACMs. They need them. They need more long-range, medium-range stuff. Whether that is more scalps or storm shadows, whether it's giving Ukraine more things for the aircraft, maybe more AIMs, more other aircraft. Like, there are things here that if Russia says no to, then we can say, we tried diplomacy, it didn't work. Full-fledged, it's time to give Ukraine the tools they need to end this war. Something that Donald Trump did say not too long ago. And remember that none of this, none of the ceasefires, none of the peace talks, nothing is moving forward without the United States. The U.S. is kind of having the final say here, and clearly Even though these countries are talking about it and putting it together, it's the US that's spearheading this. So yes, I'm talking to you directly. The Trump administration, the DOD, State Department. If Russia says no, and they don't go with any of this, it's time to go ham and give Ukraine everything they need in order to move forward. So what does that mean? At this very moment, we're going to see what happens. Donald Trump, at least at the time of this recording, I can even look it up as I'm recording this video, hasn't really said anything as it pertains to Ukraine. We know that there had been some stuff when it comes to India and Pakistan and their ceasefire, which Donald Trump announced it like at 7 o'clock in the morning. By the afternoon, it was violated. I don't know if it's still kind of moving forward, but what we can say is this. We are seeing a change in the United States, more Republicans signing on to help Ukraine. Lindsey Graham, who I'm trying to get to interview for this channel, has a massive sanction list in which he could present in the Senate anytime and would potentially get approved, because we really are truly having a, let's just say, renaissance in support for Ukraine, because we're all getting tired of this. We're all getting tired of it. We want this thing to end. Clearly, Russia doesn't, and we have to force them to do it. And that's where we're at. But I want to know your thoughts in the comment section below. First of all, if you haven't done so yet, do make sure you are actually subscribed to our channel, as we bring you guys videos on shorts and long form videos breaking down everything, because there's only so much I could do on TikTok videos. And I really do hope that you're following us over from TikTok. We're at 750,000 followers on there, which is unbelievable to me. So hopefully we can get at least 100,000 here on YouTube. So if you are watching this video, please do make sure you are subscribed, you turn on notifications, and you give this video a thumbs up. And I really do want your opinion. Where do you sit in all of this? There's a lot that is happening, I know, but I'll be sure to keep you guys updated every single step of the way, so please do subscribe, turn on notifications, and give this video a thumbs up. I'm Joey. I hope you stay safe.